You think you're falling in love, but what if you're falling into a memory, a pattern, a wound? What if the person you're chasing isn't your soulmate, but your subconscious, pulling you back into something unresolved? Carl Jung would ask you to slow down, because to Jung, our relationships aren't just about attraction, they're about reflection, projection, repetition. You don't just fall in love with someone new, you fall into a familiar feeling. And often, that feeling isn't safe, isn't nurturing, isn't peaceful. It's familiar, and familiarity isn't love, it's memory. You chase people who make you feel the way your parents did. Not because you want to, but because a part of you is trying to resolve what was never healed. To finally earn the affection you never received. To finally be seen by someone who reflects the one who didn't. It doesn't happen consciously. You don't say, I want someone cold like my father, or I'll choose someone inconsistent like my mother. You say things like, there's just something about them, or it feels like I've known them forever. Let's go back. Think about your earliest memories of love. Was it safe? Was it consistent? Did you feel chosen? Or were you praised only when you performed? Were you nurtured? Or were you neglected? Were your emotions welcomed or shamed? These questions matter. Because Jung taught that your psyche stores these emotional truths, not just as thoughts, but as embodied patterns. What you didn't receive as a child becomes what you seek in adulthood. So if love meant unpredictability, you'll be drawn to people who give and then withhold. If love meant silence, you'll chase those who leave you guessing. If love meant walking on eggshells, you'll feel alive around someone who keeps you anxious. You won't see it as familiar. You'll see it as fate. Jung called this the complex, a constellation of memories, beliefs, feelings, and behaviors anchored around a central emotional wound. You don't see the complex, but you live it. You act it out in your closest relationships. You project it onto your partners, your friends, your lovers. And unless you become conscious of it, it becomes your love story. Let's say your father was emotionally unavailable. As a child, you learned to work for love, to prove yourself, to achieve, impress, or remain invisible to avoid rejection. Now, as an adult, you're drawn to partners who are distant. You fall harder for the one who doesn't text back. You say you want love, but you only feel excited by those who make you feel unsure. You're not crazy. You're conditioned. Your nervous system doesn't recognize peace as love. It recognizes tension, because tension is what love used to feel like. This is emotional reenactment. You're not in love, you're in a loop. The people you choose aren't neutral. You don't chase who is good for you. You chase who feels familiar. And that familiarity? That's your inner child trying to rewrite the past. Jung believed the child lives on within us, not just as a memory, but as a living influence. He called this the inner child archetype. And that child doesn't want logic. It wants healing. It wants resolution. It wants to be loved by someone who reminds it of the one who couldn't. So when you meet someone emotionally unavailable, a spark lights up inside you, not because it's love, but because your inner child sees an opportunity, a chance to finally be enough. But that chance comes at a cost. You abandon yourself. You dismiss your needs. You silence your voice. You overfunction. You romanticize emotional neglect. And when it inevitably falls apart, you don't just grieve the person, you grieve the child in you that was once again not chosen. The ache is real, but the source isn't always the relationship, it's the repetition. You are the only one who can reparent the inner child. You are the only one who can stop the cycle. You are the only one who can look at a red flag and say, this isn't chemistry. This is my trauma being triggered. And that's the moment healing begins, because you stop chasing the person and you start listening to the wound. That wound says, I've been trying to be enough for so long. I just want to be loved for who I am. That wound says, I thought if I could fix them, I'd finally feel safe. That wound says, I've been performing love, not receiving it. Carl Jung would call this individuation, the process of integrating the unconscious and becoming whole. Not perfect, not pain-free, but whole. Individuation means facing your shadow, the parts of you you had to bury to survive, the neediness you shamed, the anger you swallowed, the longing you silenced. It means reclaiming those parts, not to throw them at another, but to hold them yourself. You stop saying, why don't they love me? And start asking, why do I keep choosing people who don't? You stop saying, how do I make them stay? And start asking, why do I abandon myself to keep someone else? And slowly, the spell breaks. You begin to recognize the difference between love and emotional familiarity. You stop chasing people who remind you of your parents, not because you hate them, but because you've outgrown the need to win their love in someone else's arms. You stop choosing people who hurt you in familiar ways. You start choosing peace, stability, reciprocity. At first, it might feel boring, strange, too easy. But that's because your nervous system is learning a new language, one it was never taught growing up. One where love doesn't mean tension, where presence isn't conditional, where your needs don't make you a burden, where affection is not earned through effort, performance, or perfection. It's a language foreign to many people raised in environments of emotional unpredictability, inconsistency, or neglect. A language of safety, of stillness, of mutuality. When a child grows up in an environment where emotional connection is unstable, the brain and body adapt for survival. They learn to scan for threat instead of support, to anticipate withdrawal instead of trust in closeness. And this adaptation becomes the default setting in adulthood. Even when the danger is gone, the vigilance remains. So when you meet someone who doesn't activate your fight or flight response, it feels odd, unfamiliar. Your brain tells you something is missing, when in reality, nothing is missing, everything is calm. But because calm has never felt safe, you mistrust it. You push it away. You say they're too available, too boring, not exciting. That's not a sign of lack. That's a sign of dysregulation. Your nervous system doesn't recognize safe love yet, but it can learn, and that's what healing is. Not a grand epiphany, not a clean break, but a slow, clumsy, deeply courageous process of retraining your body to feel safe in peace, to feel love that doesn't come with anxiety, to feel closeness without chaos, to receive care without suspicion. This is what healing feels like. Not fireworks, not obsession, not adrenaline, not checking your phone 27 times in an hour, not trying to decode mixed signals. Healing feels like safety. It feels like being able to breathe in someone's presence, not because they completed you, but because they never made you question your place. And when you begin to feel safe within yourself, you stop needing to chase that feeling in others. Dr. Gabor Maté once said, the question is never why the addiction, but why the pain. And the same logic applies to love. The question isn't, why do I keep falling for the wrong people? It's, why does emotional pain feel like home? Because if your first experiences of love were laced with fear, absence, criticism, or inconsistency, then your body has equated love with pain. And now when pain shows up in a romantic form, your inner child says, this is familiar, this must be love. So you chase people who don't see you. You stay with people who don't hear you. You cling to people who don't choose you, not because you want pain, but because your pain is trying to resolve itself through reenactment. Harville Hendrix, the founder of Imago relationship therapy, describes how we unconsciously seek out partners who resemble the emotional and psychological traits of our early caregivers, not to suffer, but to finally get it right. We try to turn our childhood pain to adult healing through others. But that healing doesn't come from them. It comes from you. You don't bond through trauma anymore. You don't call longing love. You don't confuse distance with depth. You begin to love from wholeness, not from a wound. And that's what Jung meant when he said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But transformation only happens when both people are intact, not fractured and looking to merge, but whole enough to meet and not lose themselves. You don't need someone to rescue you. You don't need someone to validate your worth. You don't need someone to make you feel lovable. You need someone who reflects what you've already started building within yourself, a sense of self that no longer abandons itself for love. So when you feel that familiar pull, when their silence excites you, when their indifference makes you work harder, pause. Ask yourself, is this love? Or is this survival? Is this connection? Or is this reenactment? Is this chemistry? Or is this my nervous system craving a fix? Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not follow the feeling, but name it. Name the ache. Name the pull. Name the story you've been unconsciously repeating. This is what Jung meant by individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, beyond roles, beyond wounds, beyond patterns, a self that is not fragmented by the past, but integrated through awareness. Freedom from needing to be needed. Freedom from calling chaos love. Freedom from confusing anxiety with desire. Searching for your worth in someone else's hands. You realize you were never too much. You were just giving too much to the wrong ones. And the moment you believe that, something sacred happens. You stop attracting people who reflect your wounds. You start attracting people who reflect your healing. Not because you've become perfect, but because you've become whole. And in that wholeness, you finally find what your inner child was always looking for. Not someone to rescue you, not someone to chase, not someone to fix,